I'm thankful to be part of the Hoover community. As I said, I've been here for 3 decades. All my children have gone through the Hoover school system, and they're all gainfully employed, so I'm thankful for the Hoover school system. Just a quick story. When my son was starting, I guess, the first grade, and there's some people down the street had people starting the first grade, and they were concerned, as first grade parents are, and they had really been debating about whether to send their child to private school, which is a choice, but they decided to send the child to the same place my kids went, Trace Crossings. And I never will forget, I asked the lady down the street who was so concerned, what was the first day of school like for her child, Trace? And the mother beamed and said that the teacher at Trace, that I never found out who, which makes the story even better, got all the kids together and said, this is your first day of first grade, and this is how we're going to act in our class. And she read this to the children, and if I can get my iPhone to work without me messing things up again, I should just be able to quote it, but she said she got all the kids together and said, so whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. We all know the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Tonight as we meet, we all want what's best. Everybody here and everybody in all these meetings wants what's best for our community. Community is a big word. It means common unity, community. We're in this together. What happens in your house affects my house. What happens in my house affects your house. What happens in your school affects my school. What happens in my school affects your school. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You want the best for your child. You also want the best for that other child. I know you do. That's what makes us a community. Let me pray for us, okay? Lord, we are thankful for the ability to learn. We're thankful for teachers, administrators, all the people that help our children learn. And Father, we know that they just augment what they learn from us at home. So Father, as parents gather, I know that everybody wants what's best. Your word tells us that if anybody lacks wisdom, all they have to do is ask. We ask for wisdom, especially for those who are making these decisions. And as we hear tonight and as we speak tonight, let us hear and speak as people who understand that we are all in this together, that we really are a community. And we really do want what's best not only for our child, but for that other person's child as well. Thank you for this evening. Amen.
Well, thank you for being here, and I want to thank Brother Buddy and the church here at Hunter Street for allowing us the opportunity to come back again to the church, and they're always so gracious and kind to allow us this privilege, so thank you very much. I was extremely remiss at our very first meeting because I completely ignored introducing the people who are at the table, and so I'd like to just take that point of privilege at this time. Melody Green, who's Assistant Superintendent to my far left, Kathy Ante, who's the School District CSFO, Ron Dotson, who's Assistant Superintendent, and Mary Bill, who is our Human Resources Director. Jason Gaston is with us maybe in a booth, and the lights are bright, but I see him waving at me. And so all of the people here and many more at the central office have been fully engaged in this process. And so I asked them to sit here at the table with us because each of them have had their hands on different parts of this work, and so different pieces of it for which they might provide a great explanation, and so I've invited them to join us. I want to acknowledge our board members who are also here. I believe that all of our board members are here, and if I could just ask our board to stand, I'm grateful for their presence. They've been at our other meetings, so Stephen Presley, Jill Gaines Beach, and Earl Cooper, Craig Kelly and Earl Cooper, and also Derek Murphy. Thank you to our board who's here. I want to acknowledge, and if I miss, please wave me and tell me otherwise, but I do see that we have some of our councilmen here with us. Councilman Jack Wright is with us. Do you mind standing? Councilman John Green is with us, and I see John Lyda. And if I've missed anyone, please jump up and we'll acknowledge you. So I appreciate city leadership being here with us this evening also, and I'm very grateful that you are with us. It is important to have you here. I wish that we had filled this entire auditorium because this is about the work of you and this is about the work of our children. So thank you for being here. I do want to share just a few bits of information with you. I realize that tonight is not, as I said at our last meeting, our presentation as much as it is to give you the forum to come to the microphone and talk. However, I think that there are some things that's just important for us to share. So if you've attended a previous meeting and you've heard it before, I'm sorry. There are those in the audience with us for whom this would be a first occasion. So let me say a few things. One is I have received a huge volume of emails, and I've not answered them all. And that has not been a failure on my part with intent and with purpose. It just simply has been a large volume, and I simply have not been able to address or respond to all emails. But I've certainly done my best to respond to as many as I could, and honestly, you may have sent me one and it's buried in many emails. I will tell you that the emails have been, please consider, please look at this, please be thoughtful about this, and then we've had some who've said thank you. This plan works for us. And so, as we expected and anticipated, a very mixed conversation from our community. I also want to share with you that I had shared with our board and we agreed to the process that we would use with our rezoning approach. And that included coming out to our public in the fall, and we did have 5 community meetings where our public shared with us and talked to us about the things that they wanted us to be thoughtful about as we approach the rezoning plan. We shared with our community that we then would use December and January to sit at the table with the Legal Defense Fund and with the Department of Justice to begin to develop and craft and talk about a proposed rezoning plan. And that we then would come back out to the public as we're doing tonight to make sure that we give you a voice and an opportunity to share with us those things that you're concerned about, those things that you see as challenges for you and your community, for your household for that matter. And so, thus, the opportunity for us to come together tonight. So, again, I'm grateful that you've done that. I do want to share a few things, if I might just respectfully call these ground rules. And I want to remind you, and Buddy, thank you for your comments, because we are neighbors, and we are friends, we're community, and we're family. And regardless of this process, I hope that we do not lose thought or sight of those thoughts. And so one of the things that we wanted to share with you is that in our schools, we talk to our students about positive behavior support system. Positive behavior support system includes the following. That first of all, our expectation for our students, and I'd like to fold that over to tonight, is that we be respectful. That we must respect each other's opinions and perspectives. It is quite possible for us to disagree, but we must do it agreeably. And I remind you that there are children in this audience. I would also share with you that we're live streaming, and that this live stream is going to New York, it's going to Washington, D.C., to some of the other parties who are involved in this process. And I hope what we demonstrate tonight is that, yes, while we might disagree with each other, that we can do that very respectfully. And I encourage you to please be respectful through this process. And that we be responsible, that we are focused in a forward direction, that we're being productive, that we don't come and say things that are spiteful or hurtful or that are just not appropriate for us as the community of Hoover. We also want to be resourceful. We have a 2-hour block of time that we've set aside for this. And one way that we can be resourceful is when we go to the microphone, please share with us your name. Please share with us if you're a parent. Give us your address, where your children go to school. Give us some identifying information. You're going to find that we're up here taking notes. You're going to find that, Jason, I don't know, are you going to be typing from back there? I'm not sure. But we are taking notes of the things that you're sharing with us. And so I want you to know that, and I want you to also tell us who you are and help us get that particular information. But when you come to the microphone, there are a number of people in the room. There are a number of diverse positions and opinions and concerns and challenges that people are feeling. And so, as you would obviously understand, please share with us, but please understand there are other people that want to have that opportunity to share this evening at the microphone. And obviously, I want this to be a safe environment. I want you to understand that we are here to hear you. And I want you to know that we respect you. And I want you to know that we're listening to you. I want you to understand that even after the presentation that we gave the first night where we shared this proposed plan with our public, not the first community meeting, but the first big, larger community meeting, that we shared with our public, we acknowledged that this plan is a proposed plan and that we want to hear from you. And so we want this to be a safe environment where you feel okay to share respectfully those things that are troubling you and that you find to be problems. We may say to you tonight, we want to take a note of that and we want to look at that further, or we'll get some more data to try to share with you. And so, you know, again, I want you to know that we'll answer the questions for you that we can. We've been thoughtful through this process. I believe that we've given due diligence to this plan, but I realize the plan's not perfect. I got it. You can walk up to the map and you could readily go, look at this and this, how does that make sense? I got that. And so please know that we are here to hear, we're here to share, we're here to try to answer your questions, and any number of people here at the table who may have worked on that piece of the work perhaps will chime in through this process. So those are sort of ground rules just so that we all play fairly and respectfully. I want to remind you that there are a number of parties involved in this process. And there are some very important people in this process, and you are here tonight because you're important to us. And we want to hear from you. So you, our employees, are critical to us. I spent yesterday all day in meetings sharing with our personnel in our school district about this plan, giving them a voice, allowing them that conversation. They're not all doing cartwheels thinking this is a fabulous idea either. So they're being thoughtful and reflecting on this process. This community is so important to us. We're here to serve you. That is our role. That's our capacity. I also want to make sure that you understand that there are other parties at the table with us. There are 3 other entities to whom we must have conversation and to whom we must make sure that we are respectful of the obligations this school district has under pending litigation. Our school district is a part of a desegregation court order backing all the way up to 1965 when a number of the desegregation court orders came into place. 1971, Mr. Sweeney, I apologize for being remiss in not acknowledging you, Mr. Sweeney, our attorney, but in 1971, I believe, was when the Linda Stout versus Jefferson County Board of Education lawsuit was filed. And when our school district withdrew from Jefferson County, we brought with us, we inherited, it came along with us, the desegregation court order. And so, thus, there are certain obligations that we have under the court to meet some obligations in order for this school district to get out from under the desegregation court order. And when we're able to accomplish that, and I say this respectfully, then we do not have to confer with the court on the kinds of decisions that we're having to confer with them on at this time. Mr. Sweeney, did I do fair justice to that, and would you like to add anything?
Just that the parties have been very receptive to the proposal, but the court has not approved it, nor have the Justice Department or the Legal Defense Fund.
Thank you.
But they've been very constructive and encouraging in their contribution.
Yes. Certainly we'll say to you yes, Mr. Sweeney was actually making 2 comments, and that is that the Department of Justice, the Legal Defense Fund, and Education Fund have been very cooperative. It's been a collaborative relationship. We've been at the table supportive of trying to get the very best plan together, but very clearly we would like to articulate to you that none of those parties, nor has the Hoover City Board of Education signed off on this. And we did that with purpose because we wanted to get to you and to allow you some input and some conversation. And so I'm jumping a little ahead of myself, but on or about March the 2nd or 3rd, the Department of Justice and Legal Defense Fund will come back to Hoover for us to sit back at the table with them and say to them, we've had these community meetings, here are the conversations that we've heard, and what things that you've shared with us might make this plan better. So there is an opportunity to take what you're sharing with us, go back to that table, and see if there are things that we can do that makes this plan even better, with the knowledge that we must be compliant with the court. So back up, you ran past me for just a minute. Backing up one, the Legal Defense Fund, this is a part of the NAACP, and then what I would also say to you is that on or about April 7th or 8th, assuming that all the parties agree to a proposed rezoning plan, assuming our board approves the plan, we will take that plan then to the court. Judge Madeline Heikela is the United States federal judge that will hear this case with us, and we will share with her that plan at that time. So that's the process, that's what this looks like, and I just want you to understand there are other parties at the table with us. So moving forward, just quickly, this particular proposed rezoning plan, and if I fail to say proposed and talk about the rezoning plan, please put in and understand this is a proposal. So our proposed rezoning plan impacts about 2,500 of our students, 18% of our population. Our elementary students are being impacted at a higher percentage than, or our middle school students are middle school at a higher percentage than our high school students. And so 68% of that 2,500 that are being impacted are elementary children. 18% of that 2,500 are middle school students, and 14% of those students, 2,500 students, are high school students being impacted. There's no disproportionate impact on minority children, black children to white students. And so 47% of the impact is to our black students, 45% to our white students, and other ethnicities, nationalities, get that out right in a minute, 8% of those are being impacted. You've shared some really important stuff with us already. And just to recap that quickly, we understand in the Bluff Park Elementary School, feeder zone being Simmons and Hoover High School, that there are concerns at Crest Cove and Stonebrook, and those schools under this proposed plan are being zoned to Gwen. That there are concerns at Page and O'Neill Drive, and those students have been rezoned under this plan to go to Green Valley. In the Gwen Elementary to Simmons to Hoover High School feeder pattern, we understand there are concerns at the Preserve, at Magnolia Grove, at Highland Crest, and at Pinewood, that those particular communities are being zoned all to Trace Crossings Elementary School. We know in the River Chase Elementary School, feeder zone being Berry Middle School and Spain Park High School, that Quail Run and South Lake have been rezoned to Rocky Ridge, and that there are concerns from among some of our constituents there. We understand Trace Lake, Barrington on Green, Waterford, and Summer Chase have been rezoned to Trace Crossings, that there are concerns with that. And we also know that there are concerns because that's a change to the Simmons Middle School and Hoover High School feeder zone. This is the only impact in this plan where there's a change of feeder zones. One of the things that you all asked us as a community was to be respectful of the feeder pattern and to not have our children in one high school feeder pattern at the elementary, going to a different one at the middle, and back to a different one in the high school. And we were very respectful of that, but I point out to you with great transparency that particular change there. Rocky Ridge Elementary School, feeder pattern, Berry Middle School, Spain Park High School, concerns at Huntington Trailway and River Oaks, those individual students being rezoned under this plan to Green Valley. at the Trace Crossings Elementary School, Bumpus, Simmons Middle School, Hoover High School feeder pattern. That's Scout Creek, Lake Trace, Creekside, Chestnut Ridge, and North Ridge. That there are some concerns in those communities with the South Shades Crest and the Brock's Gap feeder. And then there's some general concerns. And the general concerns that have been shared with us are specific to Green Valley, Gwynn, and Simmons, and that is the increasing poverty levels at those particular schools. Now, I want to make mention of number changes. So we've had some concerns shared with us that, you know, these aren't the numbers that you had last week. Well, I want to explain that. So there's nothing hokey going on here, okay? So as we know in Hoover City Schools, students come and students go. And some of those students are affluent, and some of those are financially struggling poverty students. Some of those students are black, some of those students are white. Numbers change because what we're trying to do is to keep this as current as we can. In addition to that, I'll give you another example of how data might change. So as we were looking at our poverty data, we realized that if we pull that data from our CMP records, that in a particular school, that school knew, CMP knew which children were free and reduced lunch. However, 10 of those students who were on free and reduced lunch had not been identified as such through the registrar. So if we pulled our data from the registrar and didn't cross-reference that with CMP, the numbers look different. 10 additional students on free and reduced lunch impacts the numbers. So what I would like to share with you is that as we continue to have days progress and time changes and students are in and out, also as we continue to cross-reference data, we're going to change these numbers because we want you to have it as exact as we can have it, as transparent as we possibly can share with you, and I'll assure you that's full transparency. So I'd like to share that about the change in numbers. I want to talk to you about why that increase in poverty in those 3 schools. We pulled this from Google, so you can go out and pull this for yourself. The red dots represent where our multi-family dwellings are. So when you look at the corridor for where our multi-family dwellings are, then you will see the impact that that corridor of multifamily dwellings has on Green Valley and on Gwynn and on Simmons in particular. So here is one of the expectations of the court. One of the expectations of the court is that we not disproportionately impact any students. Specifically, that we're not disproportionately impacting students in multifamily dwellings, children who are black, children who are in poverty. And so when you look at where those students in those multifamily dwellings live, and they go to the school zone closest to them, then thus you're going to have a population increase in poverty in some of our schools and an increase in minority students, black students in some of our schools. So one of the questions has been asked, and I would like to get Deborah Smith, Dr. Smith, to come to the table with us too, Ron. One of the things that I would like for us to make sure you hear us say is that whether this is the final plan or it's tweaked or adjusted, there will be some impact on some of our schools having higher poverty levels. And that there is a commitment from this school district, from me as your superintendent, that we're very thoughtful about how we're going to use those federal funds, Title I. So if you've heard of Title I funds are based on the number of free and reduced lunch students. And obviously, we're going to be thoughtful about how those funds are used. Under this current plan, we go from 5 of our schools being Title I schools to 4 schools, possibly 3 schools, Ron. We're still continuing to study the data and the impact there. So we should have fewer schools being Title I, which means that we'll have more opportunity to put more money into those schools that are higher poverty. And frankly, I don't think there's any question about the fact that this school district will have to step up and support the leadership in those schools with higher poverty. our teachers who are in those schools with higher poverty. And we know that all God's children are created equal, but we also know it costs more money to educate some children than others, and particularly those children who have lived in poverty and perhaps have not had the educational privilege and opportunities that other children have had. So there are some ideas that we considered, and I just want you to know that regardless of how painful our maps may look to you, I want you to understand that there have been some interesting conversations at the table for which I'm glad we've taken off the table. And some of those conversations included closing 2 schools, as a matter of fact. Of course, across the conversations, there was conversation about possibly closing a couple of schools. And we as a school district advocated that we didn't see that to be in the best interest of the school district. There was also a conversation when we went to the January 28th meeting, the last meeting that we had with the Department of Justice and Legal Defense Fund. There was a conversation about Simmons Middle School splitting 2 different directions at the 8th grade level, rising to the 9th grade, where half of them would go over to Hoover High School and some other half, or less than half, would go to the Spain Park feeder zone. That was clearly something this community said to us, please don't do that. Please don't split our children. And so I share this with you to say that there were some things that were on the table for which we were less than satisfied, and we clearly went to the table and advocated for our community. I think my conversation went something like this at the January 28th meeting. There are too many smart people in this room for us to take Simmons Middle School and split them out in 2 different directions. I know what some of you are thinking, but you did it to Trace Crossings. And so I'm sure that some of you will share that with us, and we're happy to hear your conversation about that. And then we've heard conversations about delaying this to 2017-18. Here's what I would say to you about that. One, I don't speak for the court, but I'm not really sure that the court's in favor of a delay. But I don't speak for the court. But if clearly the Department of Justice and the Legal Defense Fund believe that there's a better way for us to do things, getting it right sooner rather than later is certainly in order. In addition to that, I'll tell you honestly, I don't know how this will be less painful next year versus this year. I don't know that our community needs to go through the stress and the difficulty and the aggravations, and we could probably say a few other words here, of doing this another year. I don't want to act in haste. I want to get this right. But I can tell you I don't really see the benefit of throwing this out and going through this an additional year. I was asked at the last community meeting, what are our other options? Well, Mr. Sweeney, you correct me if I'm wrong, there are no other options. This school district will be rezoned because we're under a desegregation court order. We are seeking unitary status. One of the green factors for achieving unitary status is student assignment plan or rezoning. So let's just say that as a community, we're satisfied with everything, all's good, so why are we doing this? We still have an obligation to the court. And so as a school district, I said to you in the fall, our primary reason, our being the school district's primary reason for doing this, is let's look at the utilization of our campuses. Let's look at capacity use. And so from that end, we realized that you didn't have to be extremely bright to figure out when a school is, has a complete floor available for use that's not being used, or when a school is only at 50% of the space being utilized and others that are using every room and teachers are floating and whatever else, that we do have some issues for which we needed to visit and discuss as it related to utilizing our campuses. But we also said to our community in the fall, there is another reason we're doing this, and that is for the school district to get out from under the court order for desegregation and to achieve unitary status for our school district. This has been going on since 1971. It's time for us to find out how we can transist and meet the obligations to come out from under this court order. I know that some of you may have questions about grandfathering, and if you do, we're going to jump back to this slide. Some of you may have questions about transportation, Jason, and so we'll be glad to talk to you about transportation. And we've had many who've said, so this is going to cost the school district more for transportation purposes. While we may end up adding some additional routes, those routes under this particular plan will be shorter, and no child will be on the bus more than 7.8 miles, I think is the longest distance that any child in this plan would be on the bus. Then I know what you're thinking, but you don't know what 7.8 miles looks like when traffic's all over the top of each other. And I do get a little glimpse of that because I'm out on 280 coming to work every day. But I do respect that talking about miles sometimes really doesn't give the real feel when you're talking about how much traffic you're in. And we'll look forward to your sharing about that. We also know that this plan has a lot of other work that has to happen even after the court approves, and that is, how do we make all this transition happen? And if you have questions about that, we'll come back and share from those slides with you also. We've also, I think, lastly heard, and then we'll give you the mic, I promise, we've heard that if you didn't allow all of your employees to bring their children from out of district, we wouldn't have this problem. And I simply want to share with you that 1.6% of the children who are in this school district are children of employees. And I want to just be very upfront to say to you that I think what we glean as a school district from having teachers be able to have their children in our school district far outweighs the seats that they're pulling, 1.6% of the space in our school district. And why do I think that? Because where your children are is where your heart is. And I want their heart to be in Hoover City Schools. And likewise, when we need them to do something before school or after school, or I want them to have a conference with me about my child, I don't want them to be in a hurry to jump in the car to get to wherever it is where they live, going to pick up their children. I think there's benefit to us. We don't have to agree on that, but I believe that there's great benefit for us as a school district to have those seats being taken by teachers whose children are in our school district. By the way, they don't get to say, I want my child at ABC school. That depends on where space is available as to where those children are allowed to go. So they don't have the privilege of picking and choosing where they want to go wherever in the school district. It doesn't work that way. Okay? So I know you're anxious to come and share with us, and we look forward to that. Before, last thing I want to say, really, promise. Last thing I want to say is about the maps. There's been a lot of questions and angst about the maps. And so what I want to share with you about the maps is that these are the maps that the Department of Justice used through their GIS system. However, the Department of Justice was sitting at the table with us and clearly understood, because we had other maps and we were having conversations with them about the city. So if your street does not appear, or for some reason your subdivision didn't appear, please know that we were not ignorant of and just didn't think that a particular community or particular streets existed. And furthermore, even if the street in the subdivision is not there, based on the way that the GIS system works, it captures a space. And it doesn't care if the street's got a name there or the subdivision has a name. The GIS system knows what children are in that polygon or that area. And that's because the Department of Justice's GIS system is being fed from our iNow and our profile system. So that system knew where our children were. Yes, there were not some streets or some subdivisions. We asked our city, and by the way, gentlemen, I'd like to thank you, because we asked the city if they'd let us connect into their GIS system, as their GIS system has all streets and all subdivisions and everything up to date. But please don't think, because these maps did not show all that, that we were remiss and that people were bumped and moved around because we didn't know things existed and didn't know communities were there. We've gone out to drive these areas. because we want to look at where is that school and where is that neighborhood, and does this make sense to go here, or does it make sense to get sent way over here? And so I do want you to know that we're driving the routes. We'll get out there in the early mornings, we'll get out there in the late afternoons, because we want to see it, we want to touch it, we want to feel it, we want to understand what your concerns are as it relates to the traffic. And I realize in some cases it looks like and feels like all these people are coming this way and all these people are coming this way, and you're about to bottleneck everybody. And so I know that that's a concern. So respectfully, I'm zipping it, and would ask you to please come to the microphone with any conversations you'd like to have. Please identify yourself so that we can take vigorous notes. So tonight, this group of, y'all help me. What's this, our group? This is our Gwen, Trace Crossings, South Shades Crest, Gwen. I'm sorry, I don't have my cheat note. Please allow those for whom this is the meeting on record to come to the microphone first. I apologize for not having those notes. We want to hear from all of you, but we certainly want to give those for whom we identify this to be sort of their meeting to come to the mic first. I will also tell you this, as of today, we've added an additional community meeting. There were some concerns about Thursday's meeting conflicting with a meeting at Hoover High School, and to take any concerns about that off the table, Monday night we will hold an additional meeting for those who have concerns that they can't be here on Thursday night, and we're still trying to finalize. Jason, did we finalize the location for that? I can't see if that's an upper. He said no. Please know that we will post the location for that meeting just as soon as possible. Monday night, I believe that's the 22nd at 6 o'clock, we're adding an additional meeting just in case somebody feels like they weren't heard or they have a conflict within the other meetings. Okay?
Hello, my name is David McCollum. I'm a resident of Hoover and an employee. And I was just wondering, how is our community going to benefit from getting out from under the 1971 court order?
As a result of being under the court order, there is a lot of jurisdiction for which the court has over us. The court could be very involved as it relates to personnel and hiring, could be very involved in terms of programs in our school district, programs to offer, programs at which schools to be offering. They could have a vested interest in conversation with us about what properties we might sell. So as long as we're under the desegregation court order, and until we achieve unitary status, there's much more oversight on the part of the courts than I think we really want, because we're smart people and we can figure this out. And we would like to make those decisions very respectfully, independent of the court. But to get there, there is the need to make sure that we're addressing those green factors, and right now it is the student assignment plan.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, yes, my name is Jennifer Sheehy. I have 2 children at Hoover City Schools. My 5th grader is flourishing at Brock's Gap currently, and he went all the way through Trace Crossings. And my 1st grader is now at Trace Crossings Elementary School. I wrote down my thoughts so that I could get them all clear, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I understand that the board has spent many tireless hours trying to find the right rezoning that would fit for the school system, and I do appreciate that. However, as a Trace Crossing parent and homeowner in the Trace Crossings community, I feel the goal has not been reached under this proposed rezoning plan and have concerns. We at Trace Crossing Elementary School have also spent much time and energy over the past few years fighting what we felt was an unjustified stigma about our community school. Our community school is great. Our teachers are wonderful and have just worked really well. We had faith that Hoover City Schools would help take care of our school and help rebuild our reputation. Instead, with this proposed plan, the community of Trace Crossings has been effectively dissolved, really, even though we were built as an entire community. And Trace Crossings Elementary School has been cut off now by surrounding zones and will be denied the opportunity of future growth, which has been one of the goals of the rezoning project. Only 2 of the 7 Trace Crossing communities will now attend Trace Crossings Elementary. I reside in one of those 2 communities. My son will see a drastic change in students next year, with about 70%, I believe, change. An important factor to consider when making the final decision is that Willow Trace and Park Trace are the 2 oldest and most established neighborhoods in Trace Crossings. Thus, many of our children have or soon will age out of Trace Crossings Elementary. The growth in our community, in our Trace Crossings community, and the homes of burgeoning families can be found in the other 5 Trace Crossing communities. And they will no longer be zoned for Trace Crossings School. I feel that rather than revitalizing Trace Crossings Elementary, this zoning plan will hinder the school and markedly limit its growth potential. It seems that our school will remain under capacity, and with this rezoning will also divide the neighborhood. We want to keep the Trace Crossing community together. We also want our Trace Crossing school to thrive and for our teachers to be recognized for their excellent work with our children. What else can be done to help our school grow and thrive? What else can be done to help keep our community and school together that we are so proud of and that we have worked so hard for? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Jennifer McCollum. I teach in Hoover. My husband teaches in Hoover. We live in Hoover. We moved to Hoover after we started teaching in Hoover. We're invested in Hoover. Our kids have gone through, I'm sorry, I get emotional. We love Hoover. We chose to put our kids in Hoover. We don't have kids in elementary school anymore, so maybe we don't have a dog in the fight, but we love Trace Crossing. And I really hate the reputation that has been developed, the unfair stigma in my mind. I have some concerns about the current plan. I know you've heard them all, but I want you to hear it from one more person. I'm concerned that it is the only elementary school that is split between 2 middle schools. I feel like I am concerned that basically Trace is being dismantled as a school and being rebuilt. You know, we've got the technology, we can rebuild. That doesn't mean we have to. I really wish that we would keep what is the Trace Crossing community at the Trace Crossing Community School. I understand we've got to have contiguous borders. I haven't been in all the meetings, but I have watched live streaming and listened, and I've heard many of your comments, all of your comments. I know we need the contiguous borders. Give us Wilburn Lake. Great. Give us Trace Crossing community, the entire community back. That's awesome. I just feel that too large a percentage of the Trace Crossing Elementary School is being impacted. So those are my thoughts on Trace Crossing. I also understand this plan has not addressed the high school, but as a parent with 2 kids that will be at the high school next year, my husband and I both teach at the high school. lot of white kids because we're having to move a lot of black kids to get the contiguous borders back. I'm just curious if that is the case.
As we use the GIS system to help us take a look at our community, wherever those students lived, as those zones were drawn, they were impacted. I want you to clearly know that I am a proponent of community schools. And I will tell you that based on, in my mind, the idea of a contiguous community, and I remember literally saying at some of our meetings, if this is the school, the closer you are to the school, the less likely you're to be zoned away from that school. And I remember, doing this number to share that. Contiguous, however, as you look at the map, clearly is not just a central circle, if you will, around that. Contiguous, as is looked at by the court, is as long as there's no break in that. So as we were capturing that opportunity to address the court, there was a resulting impact almost of equal proportion on both races. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Dawn Blake. I live in the Grand Oaks community. I have two children. One is at South Shades Crest in 4th grade, and one is at Bumpus in 8th grade. So I have two areas that I just wanted to mention. One is the high school. I want to echo Ms. McConnell's thoughts. I was really disappointed that we saw very little change to the high school makeup, and I know that hopefully that will come in the future. Then my other concern is, as we look at the splitting of South Shades Crest and Brock's Gap to form one large elementary school at two different campuses, I know that a lot of the funding is based on numbers of students at the school. So as our numbers go down, I guess I'm concerned that some of the resources that we have grown accustomed to and has made South Shades Crest so good, and Brock's Gap as well, because my daughter attended there before Bumpus, such as assistant principals, reading coaches, math coaches. My concerns are that those will go away as our numbers go down. But I find that a big concern as we approach next year with budget concerns that the school system is already having. So do you feel like that elementary feeder system is going to be at a disadvantage, especially where funding is concerned, because we will be looked at as two schools with a lower student population? Obviously, the state allocates funds to us based on student membership in our schools, so we have that amount of money coming to us. In addition to that, our Hoover City Schools invest significant money above and beyond all the money that's earned for the school district from our state. I don't see anything about this plan that would have a negative impact on us being Hoover and serving our children well, and not providing the minimum for our children, but being very accustomed to providing the very best that we could. No question about the fact that we've had conversations about budgets. I think it's very important for us as a school district to take one bite at a time out of this big, large elephant, and the bite that we have in our mouth right now to chew and to digest is that of the rezoning plan. I would be hopeful that we would find a way to keep personnel in place to help us get through this big change first. How does this impact us and support our children to the nth degree? So I don't see anything about this plan for which the alarm bells are going off for me. This plan was in no way designed to cut people out of jobs or decrease who we are or to be less than we are. We want us to be great and even more and better as a school district. So I hope that you don't see that to be an end result. It certainly is not any intent of this plan to do that. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, Brian Faulkner. I live here in Hoover. First, I want to thank all of you on the board that are always putting in the work to deal and tackle such a tough issue. Small story about myself. My myself, Brian, my wife, Sephra, my 2 kids, Lake and Lainey Faulkner, are both here tonight. Just a quick point, those 2 children that are there both attend, or will attend Trace Crossings Elementary. Lakin is in the 1st grade now. Lainey will, or is slated to go there, I guess, unless she moves to one of the other 2 schools that she'll have to go to. We moved here last year. We were relocated to Hoover, so this, the history of what's going on is somewhat new to us. It led me to dive into some of the data and some of the history, and when I got into the points that Ms. Singleton was making in the February 20th meeting between the Department of Justice and the court, I will say, and she speaks briefly about transfer students, and then she goes into another point. I'd like to read that. It says, but I would like to point out that with regard to the diversity of the school district, it is quite a diverse school district. On paper, virtually all the schools, I guess, district-wide, about 25% of the students are African American. And with the exception of 2 or 3 of the 16 schools, all of those schools fall within 20 to 30% African American population. So the schools actually are quite diverse on paper. I've listened to the last 3 meetings, and I continue to hear the point that we need to address this situation. Yet every time I listen to this point, it always comes back to utilization of the school building, not the students. I see the changes that are being made, but I still see 2 schools that are below 20% African American population, 1 that's below 10% African American population. I wonder why that's not being addressed. So that's number 1. Number 2, between my 2 children, they will be in elementary school at the same time. One is age 6 and one is age 2. I feel it's very tough to have 2 elementary school children that are going to be in 2 different campuses, yet in the same feeder. I think that needs to be addressed because, as of right now, my wife takes our children to school, and she'll have to travel to both places. That's just a choice of ours. From the Trace Crossing standpoint, I've heard that the schools are going to be the same, offer all the same things, so I'd like to know when the STEAM lab and when the Makers Lab are going to be built at South Shades Crest. Looking at the data, if these changes between what I've seen from 2014 and what I've seen from 2015, I don't see significant changes in desegregation status. Why can we not apply for unitary status now as we stand and then build schools moving forward as we would as the rest of the area increases? And then along the lines of the green factors, which I've learned much about in the last couple weeks, it seems like we're very lacking in a desegregated workforce. And I'd like to see data on where that stands in these changes that are being made between the schools and how that is going to roll out and what plans we're making to work on desegregating our workforce. Last but not least, is there any type of public vote that's going to happen? This is new to my family. We've never dealt with this type of rezoning before. And could we go through a public hearing or a public vote on whether or not this plan should move forward? Thank you.
There were a lot of questions there, so let me just take a shot at just trying to answer some of them, and we've taken notes, and if we do not answer all your questions, we'll certainly be glad to. As it relates to the desegregation court order, one of the things that our school district has done, other school districts have done, and has been acceptable to the court in the past, is that we have taken, and you'll hear different terms used, but enclaves, islands, satellites of students that have been lifted out of a community, and in the case of our black students, have been lifted out of communities and have been dispersed in other schools that may not have been closest to their home. That is not acceptable to the court, and while it once upon a time was, that no longer is. And so the idea of enclaves of students being lifted and moved and dispersed is no longer acceptable to the court. So that brings us to relooking at how we can continue to try to maintain our community school concept, but also at the same time being thoughtful about the fact that there is an expectation that we're not busing any group of students some distance away and dispersing those students for the purposes of diversity. There is no plan for a public vote per se. We have come to you so that you can share with us, so that we can go back to the table and be a voice for the things that you're sharing with us. On about March the 7th, it is my intent as the superintendent, assuming DOJ, LDF, and we as a school district are in some at least conceptual agreement about where we are, I will ask our board to approve that plan. It's their option to approve or not to approve the plan at that point. I really don't know how to predict for you what might happen if we don't. The court does have a hearing to address Hoover City Schools on April the 7th and 8th, I believe it is. And upon our failure to reach some sort of agreement with the two other parties, I'll just refer to two other parties rather than continue to say LDF and DOJ, but upon our failure to reach an agreement with the other two parties and it goes to the judge, then the matter's completely in her hands. And Judge Heikela would then have the right as the federal judge to make a decision about what our rezoning may look like, and whether she might choose at that point to craft that plan. Again, I don't speak for the judge, or how she might address that would be totally in the purview of her decision making. And so what we're trying to do is to be thoughtful through this process, to advocate for all of our children, to hear you as a community, to get back to the table with the other two parties and share the things that you're sharing with us in hopes of making the proposed plan even better, in hopes of making the plan more palatable to us as a community. At the same time, respecting the fact that there are certain obligations this school district is under in terms of addressing the desegregation court order. I missed some things, probably. When you're mentioning workforce, are you making reference to the personnel in the school district? I'm sorry, where's my... Yes, thank you. Thank you. We'll do our best with both of those, and I'll pitch the microphone either way if others want to share. As it relates to personnel, that is an additional green factor. There are 6 green factors. It's been important for us to address this student rezoning first. So this is the step 1. As soon as we complete the rezoning process, there are 5 other green factors for which we must meet the satisfaction of the court, and one of those is indeed that of teachers and staff, certificated and support staff. And so Mary Bill is our Human Resources Director, and Mary and her department are giving great thought to how we're recruiting quality teachers, quality personnel across the board, with a clear understanding that there's an expectation that our teacher and support staff very clearly represents the racial composition in our school district. So we do have a recruitment plan that is in, I'm going to say, in an initial phase or stage as to how we go out to seek really quality folks, with obviously an understanding too about the expectation of the court. As it relates to our schools and your concerns that some of them just do not get to that approximate 25% racial composition that we have across the board in our school district, I'll just give an example, and we can discuss this further if you'd like to, but obviously, let's take Greystone, for example. And when we look at Greystone and we're looking at, I'm going to have to line this up for myself, when we're looking at the percentage of black students at Greystone, it currently is 10%, and under this proposed plan would remain at 10%. Here's the difficulty when you look at a school like Greystone, its location. 280, 459? How do you move those students to create more of a 25% or get it closer to what the district looks like? So honestly, again, full transparency, Greystone has not been impacted by this rezoning plan, and in great measure that's a result of its location. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Dr. Murphy. For those of you who don't already know, my name is Shilpa Kagar. I am a resident of Trace Crossings, and I have 2 children, one who is a current 3rd grader at Trace Crossings Elementary School, excuse me, and a little girl who is going to start kindergarten this year at what we hope would be Trace Crossings Elementary School. Dr. Murphy, you and I have spoken before, and I spoke last week. Many of you are already aware of some of my feelings regarding this plan. I hadn't planned to speak last week, so I didn't really have anything prepared, and I have a few items that I would like to speak about today, if that is all right. What I wanted to talk about is how this plan is affecting our community, our school, and my family. I am just one of thousands of families in this district, but I think that my family story is probably similar to many. Trace Crossings as a neighborhood was originally designed to be an all-inclusive neighborhood. It was designed to be a neighborhood where you had a community with schools and churches and businesses. And so your children go to school there, you have doctors there, my children's dentist is in the neighborhood. Even our grocery store is called Publix at Trace Crossings. And with this move, by splitting up the neighborhood, by taking the majority of the neighborhood, it's not splitting it in half. You are dividing the very community that the school and the community was built around in the school that was there. Deer Valley still goes to Deer Valley Elementary. River Chase still goes to River Chase Elementary, and Greystone still goes to Greystone Elementary. But the majority of Trace Crossings will no longer go to Trace Crossings Elementary. And while we do live in different subdivisions, we are a community. As you can see, we have all come together here, and we have built a community in our school. And as citizens of the city and residents of Trace Crossings, parents who send our children to Trace Crossings, whether we remain there or not, we are very concerned about how this plan is impacting the school. 70 or 71% of the current Trace Crossings children will no longer attend the school. And then they're leaving, and these are the numbers that I think sometimes are hard to see when you look at percentages, only about 120 to 125 children behind. That runs about 20 to 25 children per grade. Then those children will get an influx of all new children, but you will be creating a new school. They will have to create new friends. The teachers will have to get to know them. They will have to get to know the teachers. The children and their families will need to get to know the school. It is essentially like building a whole new school back up again. And when you add up the numbers of the children who are leaving Trace Crossings and then coming to Trace Crossings, that is 50% of the elementary school kids that are impacted by this plan. And I know that, and that was one of the things that I know that y'all tried to keep in mind. I know that you've been working very hard on this plan, and we do appreciate all the work that has gone into it. Again, I'm just trying to speak to how we don't feel it benefits our community and our school. So that's 50%. But let's talk about what happens after the next step, because children are resilient. Children will make friends. Everybody, the new children, new families who move into Trace Crossings will get to know the school. You'd say it's a one-time thing, but it's not. As other people have mentioned, Trace Crossings is the only elementary school to be split between 2 middle schools. But here's the thing. When the original presentation was presented and we saw the flow chart of the feeder schools, the arrows were even between Bumpus and Simmons, but it is not even. The only people who are going to be going to Bumpus are those same 120 children who remain at Trace Crossings. So that means every year for those 20 to 30 children, their entire community that they have built will again be torn apart. And then at the most socially vulnerable time, and we're talking 6th through 8th graders, we're talking preteens, we are talking a time that is awkward and is socially difficult for many children. You're going to take those 20, 30, maybe 40 children and put them into Bumpus, which is a very large school. So you're going to take those children and make them 10% of a new school where they don't know anybody and everybody knows everybody else. Now, what does this mean for me and my family? I am not originally from Alabama, if you couldn't tell by the accent. And there's a funny thing that happens when I'm home or visiting with friends anywhere else in the country and you say you live in Alabama. There's a look that you get. There's a tone that they say when they say, oh, how is that? Well, as a Trace Crossings parent, that's the look that you get when you say that your child attends Trace Crossings from the rest of the community. But we, living in Trace Crossings and having spoken to other parents about the wonderful things that are going on there, chose to send our child to Trace Crossings, and he has thrived. It is a wonderful school with wonderful teachers and administrators. And provides certain enriching activities that will not be available at the school that he is going to be transferred to. I have full faith, especially after last week's meeting, that the school district and the administration at Brock's Gap and the teachers who will be moving there are working very hard to make it into a 3 to 5 school and make it compatible for that age children, provide the academics involved, provide the resources. But there will not be a makerspace. There will not be a STEAM laboratory. There will not be the imagination playground that we have raised money for the students at Trace Crossings to utilize. And for my child, that is what excites him about school. And so he will no longer, yes, he will get the same math education and English and whatever other subject that are in school, but those enriching activities will no longer be available to him. And my daughter will never be able to experience this. In addition, people talk about traffic, and I understand, I very much appreciate the fact that the school district has tried to address that by applying to the state and receiving a waiver for South Shades Crest. So there should be buses, and we put our children on the buses, and that should decrease the amount of traffic. But I am a working parent. I cannot be at home to pick up my child from the bus stop. So I will have to I will be sending my child to extended ed at both South Shades Crest and Brock's Gap. So regardless of the mechanisms that everybody is trying to provide to reduce the amount of traffic, it's still going to occur. I am still going to be in that South Shades Crest traffic, going to South Shades Crest to pick up one child, going to Brock's Gap to pick up another, when previously I could, from work, hop off the highway, zip into my neighborhood, go to Trace Crossings, pick up my children, and be home in 10 minutes. So what do we want? I mean, we're up here and we're saying that we don't want this plan. You said earlier in this meeting that on March 5th there's an opportunity to get back with the parties involved and make some changes. So what we ask, or what I ask, and I know that many in my community ask, is that you reconsider moving Trace Crossings back to Trace Crossings Elementary School. It is only at 70% capacity, even with this new plan, which means that there's room for 200 to 300 more children. And we also ask that you seriously look at the division between Bumpus and Simmons. I know it's not an easy thing. I cannot imagine how hard it must be to try to make sure that there is room at Bumpus for the growth that's occurring and make sure that the numbers will eventually balance out. But even with moving Trace Crossings back into that school, it's still very detrimental to our children when they are going to be such a minority population going into middle school. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Amy Ranks. I live on Summit Cove, which is right off of Shades Crest. I have 2 kids at Gwen and 1 2-year-old that is trying very hard to be patient during this. I had an entire speech lined out, but you touched on most of my points in your opening remarks. So at this point, my questions really are, I know that you've heard us because you've repeated back what we said. Are there plans to make changes based on what you said earlier? Are there plans to address moving Trace Crossings back into Trace Crossings, moving the Preserve and surrounding neighborhoods back into Gwen? Are there plans to look at the disproportionate amount of poverty students at Gwen and Simmons? It would be so easy to shift some of those, especially for Simmons, since you're already splitting Trace Crossings. Don't send all of the that can be an easy fix to be made. And I understand that 18% overall are being moved. It's 51% of Gwen. It's 52% of Green Valley. It's 72% of Trace Crossings. When I look at my kids, they don't see the difference in skin color. is no different to them than care help. I want to say they're moving them because this person has brown skin. That doesn't make sense to them. And I can't look at them and say they're moving the neighborhood out of your school that's closest to your school because they wanted to. There's not a logical explanation for that. I think the goals could be met alternatively. And I know you've heard our plan, our concerns, and you say it's our plan. So is there a plan in place to make adjustments for our concerns?
There are ongoing conversations at the central office every day, to include today, when these individuals and others sat at the table, looked at the maps, talked about logic, talked about what other ideas we have based on the feedback that we've already received from our community. We've already sent to the other two parties the conversation of notes that occurred from our last community meeting. So not only are we going back to the table on an ongoing basis after hearing our community, we're also making sure that we're sending out those conversations and those notes to the other two parties so that they clearly are seeing where we are and tracking where we are. And so there are ongoing conversations, and to the extent that the things that we learn from our community are strategies that allow us to meet all of our obligations, we would be absolutely silly and ridiculous not to embrace the things that make this plan better and make this plan more palatable to our community, at the same time allowing us to meet our obligations.
So at this point, would it be more helpful for us to provide suggestions rather than concerns? I mean, we're sending emails in. Should we say, if you move the preserve here, that frees you up to move the trace here? Or is that too confusing?
Well, to the extent that we need to know the composition of the students that are being moved. So unless you clearly know the number of students at a certain location and the color of those students and all the other demographics for which we're giving study, that's not really helpful, but you're certainly welcome to do that. But when we're moving this around and looking at this, we very clearly have the demographics of the students who are being involved in the process.
Yeah, we've gotten pretty good at fact digging too to find out that information because we're pretty invested in it. My other question would be, have those maps changed since they were first put out? The maps that are up there tonight, are they still the same thing, or have there been changes made?
There have been no changes made because obviously if we made changes after first community meeting to come to second community meeting to hear something different and went to third community, it's important for us to get the entire stakeholder feedback, and then at the end of that process, and I'll add a piece to this, on April the 24th, there will be a meeting at, I believe that meeting's at 2 o'clock for February, I'm really jumping out there. February the 24th, there is an additional meeting where we'll bring a smaller group of parents and other stakeholders that principals have helped us identify. We'll bring those individuals to the table. So at that point, we've clearly heard from our community at large. We've sat with a smaller group of individuals to share with us, and that meeting will be at the central office. And then from that, I think we can clearly then sit down with the other two parties and advocate on behalf of our community the things that will allow us to make this plan better for our community.
I'd have to double check, but I believe that one of the apartment zones is green on there instead of yellow as it is online. The park at Hoover, it's also known as Landmark at Magnolia Glen. I believe it's zoned for River Chase on the one that's up there, but zoned for Glen on the one that's online.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out.
That has not been a change, it's still zoned for Glen? Or?
No, and you know, whether, I don't know anything about that, so we will obviously change, but to answer your question, nothing has changed in the plan. So if we have some color coding issues, then we'll certainly take a look at that, but nothing's changed.
I'm going to pass out, I have copies of what I was going to say, just because it has my facts on it, so I'll pass it out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay? Hi.
Hello, my name is Morgan Lee, and I live in Willow Trace, which is part of the Trace Crossings. I am on the PTO executive board at Trace Trace Crossings Elementary School. And I am also one of the people that did not grow up in Alabama. So I know how it feels to be in a new school, and have new friends. And I can tell that my kids will do fine, though I am concerned, like every other parent, about all the changes that are happening. There are a couple things that I wanted to address, and I'm not sure if those are things that you've considered or looked at, but I know that these talks are being listened by a whole bunch of people that are not here and are also being influenced. So one of the main items, and why I mentioned I'm on the PTO, is the PTO board. In Trace, besides the student population, there's a huge change in our PTO board. And when I mean huge, I mean absolutely everything is gone and we pretty much have to start from scratch. There's only a very small handful of people that were still zoned in Trace. And I foolishly, I guess, I volunteered to be one of the people to look for new PTO boards for next year. This was before the zone plan came out. So I'm really concerned, not just personally, but I'm concerned for the school. It is really hard to find volunteers to be on the PTO board in regular school year. And this is adding another wrinkle to the plan. We cannot address this until the rezoning is finalized. So one of the questions I have is to know when is the final version of the zone. I know that's a really hard thing to answer, and you don't have to answer it, but I would like to have that available to the public very soon, because we as PTO need to know that. I'm sure the principals need to know that, but we as PTO need that to know that it should be just something that's shared with the principals. I think it should be shared with the public. I know there's going to be changes. I'm not against changes. There's nothing wrong with changes. I do object to some changes, obviously. I love my parents that come from other Trace communities. We have become very close, and obviously it would be very hard to lose them. I'm not sure if you're aware, because I know you were new to the district, Dr. Murphy. We've met actually a couple of times. I don't know if you remember. I know it's really hard to imagine this, but when we came, we left Trace. We actually wanted to buy a house in the zone and go there. We saw the benefit of it being a Title I school. One of the reasons, I don't know if everyone's aware, I'm not sure this is actually true, where I've been told is if you're a Title I school, you actually are able to get extra resources for the school. And that was one of the positive things that I actually liked about Trace. I know probably everyone's thinking that's weird, but it's not. To me, I came from a family that by all means would be considered poor in these terms anyway. And I did very well. I went to college and I have an MBA. Obviously I did really well, but that to me doesn't make any difference. I know some people stress that and pointed out that there's going to be so much poverty in one school and another one doesn't. To me, it doesn't matter. I think what matters are the teachers, and I think Hoover has really good teachers. I don't think that's a problem. I do believe it's a problem when we move things around. And that's one of the things I think that we as Trace are trying to point out very strongly and very frequently, that we want more kids in our school. We welcome more kids in our school. We actually particularly don't care where they come from. We are just concerned that we never saw this kind of coming, that we were going to lose kids that were part of our community. And unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but the communities that we're losing were one of the most vested communities in our state. I don't know if everyone knows, but at Trace, because we had, I don't know why, a very bad reputation, there were a lot of things done at Trace to, I guess, improve its image. And one of the things that we did is to really involve parents and bring them out and do a lot. I feel like we were kind of kind of punched in the gut, because we did so much hard work, we raised so much money, we came after hours, we spent, I'm sure, much more volunteer hours than other schools, because we felt like we were being misrepresented. And now things are not getting better, it seems like they're going to get worse. And that's one of the things that we're really concerned about. And I don't mean to criticize the work you've done. I know it's really hard, and I know it's easy to say that the purple is going to be this school and the orange is going to be this school, but there are people behind it, and it's not just students, it's also parents. It's all the amount of hours and work that we do for our schools that are going to be dismissed in a way. And I know you don't mean to do that. I know you have kids of your own, and you do this in the best interest of all kids, not just certain kids, or, and I hate to even use this term, but segregated kids or desegregated kids, or whatever you want to term that. I'm a big proponent of not thinking in colors. I want to think of people as people. And I believe if we look at the lines at highways for 59 and 31 and base our judgment on that, and we present that to the judge, we have a better chance than looking at percentages of colors or poverty or whatever it is that we're looking at. That's, I think, where we kind of, like the judge, right? The scale holder, that's blind, doesn't look at that. They just look at lines on a piece of paper. If we do that, I think we stand a better chance to gain our, and I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce it for the life of me, Unitarian status. That's what I would like to see. And I would like to conclude with, thank you for the hard work you're doing, and I know you're going to do the best that you can do. And I really sincerely hope that we do have a rezoning for this year. I do not want to drag it out another year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Faulkner. I live in Lake Trace, which is one of the 7 neighborhoods in Trace Crossings. I have a first grader at Trace Crossings Elementary. Just to give a quick background with my family, we come from a state whose some children are bused an hour each way to and from school. And in our state, you get to choose where your student attends school as long as the parent is willing to provide that transportation for that student. And I was surprised when we moved here that wasn't an option. So when we moved here, we relied solely on the help of people that we met with, my husband's company that moved us, and our realtor. And one of the things that our realtor was happy to show us was the BirminghamHomeReview.com. And that helps families who are not from Alabama to look at neighborhoods in groups. It has the Preserve, it has Trace Crossings, it has Greystone, and the description for Trace Crossings is that it was a pre-planned development that was meant to be able to be one community, which means live in that community, go to church in that community, which is this is my church, go to school in that community, which is Trace Crossings. My child goes to daycare in this community. All of our physicians, dentists are inside of Trace Crossings. Everything we do is within 1.5 miles of my home. And we used our realtor in this description of Trace Crossings to choose this school for our family. And now this description of Trace Crossings is going to be a lie. If for those of you who are not familiar with Trace Crossings, when you come down the road where Trace Crossings is on the left, there's 2 subdivisions of Trace Crossings. On the right are the other 5 neighborhoods. They just went down the road and said everybody to the right now has to go to South Shades Crest. That's how they drew the line. Even though I live within 1 mile of my school, my pre-planned development to my child will be attending now must go to South Shades Crest. I have nothing against the schools. I personally don't know enough of the schools to say negative or positive about them. However, I do appreciate the parents that came before me with Trace to develop the Makers Lab and the STEAM Lab and all of the things that have caught the attention of my son, who's a little bit hyper. Sorry, Miss McAbell. But those things help rein him in and drive him in a way that he is able to learn specifically for him. And now, if he has to change schools, those things are no longer available
nothing has been done. So we're looking at growth that hasn't happened, and who knows when it's going to be available. But my children live there today. We live there now. So I'm not concerned about the 500 homes that may or may not happen. I'm concerned about my home. And speaking of my home, I did call our realtor, and I asked her, what does this mean for my property value? Because now when somebody goes to a website, and they're not from Hoover, they're not from Alabama, and they look at my beautiful description of my all-inclusive community, and when the realtor brings them to my house, and she says, I'm sorry, one child has to go here, one child has to go there, and the other child has to go over there, and you have to be able to pick them up all within a time frame and make sure that they're all their different community activities, but they're all going to be broken down. That doesn't work well for my home value. She said the other thing that was said specifically by the board, and I quote, South Shades Crest is a traffic debacle. It was stated that you all do have plans to change the entrance into the school. However, that does not change the amount of traffic on the road, and it does not change the flow of traffic on South Shades Crest. So I hope it's not the entrance to the school, but the actual road itself. And I'm going to have to turn left out of my neighborhood now. With all the oncoming traffic, which don't even live in Trace Crossing, but will be going to my school, I will have to turn left, drop past them, and go down to Shades Crest. And then drop my other child off at daycare. And again, like some of my other neighbors have said, picking all those children up is going to be difficult. The other thing was just to point out that 3 of the schools are below 11% poverty. I know some of them have increased, but 3 of them are still below poverty level. And one of the things I appreciated earlier was that you had specifically said first graders and fourth graders will be grandfathered in. I appreciate my first grader being allowed to stay at Trace. I was sad to find out that that's for 1 more year. I was also sad to find out that that does not include his siblings. So although my first grader will be allowed to stay at Trace for 1 more year, all of his siblings will have to change schools. So I'm still having split with my children. And I've done a lot of research on statistics and studies with children, how that affects them emotionally and mentally. But one of the things that I came across was how it impacts specifically reading and math skills. For students who change schools frequently, and with mine being a first grade, he would go to 3 schools in 3 years, reading level falls to 41% below grade level for those children. Math levels fall 33% below grade level. That has nothing to do with color. That has nothing to do with how much money I make. That has to do with moving children. That's it. And I don't understand why I have to also split my child in his activities. Everything that we do is in Trace. All of the Boy Scouts, everything that we do is here. We're going to be going to a different school. So how is he going to be able to form those lasting relationships? We're new to Alabama. It's tough enough trying to find our family here. And we've done that. When we moved in, the first thing that our neighbors came up to tell us was, Trace is amazing. And we heard all the negative stuff coming in. And we decided to find out for ourselves how wonderful it is. We have met the best teachers, and I'm so thankful that a bunch of them are here tonight. And I appreciate you all coming. I don't want to move from Trace. I specifically purchased my home in this community for my children. And now my backyard is going to be torn apart. So I just want to know, again, to recap, what's that look like for people moving into Alabama, where Trace is no longer a community? 2, what are you going to do about the flow and amount of traffic on South Shades Crest? Not just at the school, that actual road, from the Y all the way down. But again, I appreciate all that you've done, and appreciate us being able to voice our opinion and our concerns. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeannie Shea, and I've had the honor and privilege of living in 3 different Trace Crossings community, from Willow Trace to Chestnut Trace, and have now downsized to Creekside. 3 of our 5 children went through the entire Hoover school system before we started making changes. We were very fortunate to go, step by step. We are now working on the second generation grandchildren who are quickly becoming of age to go to those schools. But interesting that the person before me, I'm actually a realtor who works the Trace Crossings community, and I wanted to address you all from a real estate point of view and what I hear from people moving into Trace Crossings. And I have a greater concern over home values. So the home values in Trace Crossings have been inching up. And I give tremendous credit to the team of parents and teachers and administrators at Trace Crossings Elementary. And I've had the opportunity to meet with the administrative team and hear the story. So when I have someone who doesn't know our community, who doesn't know Trace Crossings, I can brag about all the great things going on. Because interestingly enough, somehow out-of-state people catch on to that stigma of Trace Crossings Elementary. So today I'm able to tell them, let me tell you, I have met with these people, and let me tell you all the great things going on at Trace Crossings Elementary. And I can sell them over the hump. But it breaks my heart when a homeowner has to take a lesser value because an out-of-state person says, well, I know they're working on it, but they're probably still 3 or 4 years out. And if my company transfers me in that time frame, I don't want to pay this value for that house if I have to turn around and sell it. So in addition to the shuffling of the children and all the concerns we've heard today from all of my neighbors, the other concern is home values and then the economic impact these changes have on all of my neighbors and on my home value. And the shuffling and the changes create that uncertainty. So when people are looking at buying and they have young children, today I don't have an answer for them where their children are going to be zoned, and that uncertainty doesn't work. So I have to get real creative and sell all the great things, but it does impact home values, and I hope that at some level someone is looking at that because it hits everyone's pocketbooks. And so I certainly want that to, I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
My name is Laura Jackman. I live in the Preserve neighborhood and have 2 boys, 4th and 1st grade, that are currently zoned to Gwynn. Under the proposed plan would be rezoned to Trace. I have voiced my opinion as far as the Preserve neighborhood being moved away to Trace. But I had some time in the car today, and I was thinking about another issue, and it led me to come up with a different question. We've heard a lot about these enclaves, both in these meetings and in the transcripts from the court. I presume that we don't have the information as to where these enclaves are or exactly which developments we might be speaking of, but I presume that it could be safe to assume that they might involve some of the multifamily dwellings in our area. I know that for Gwynn and Green Valley particularly, we're basically just switching 3 apartments with 3 other ones, which will result in a difference of travel of about 2.1 miles. I wonder if in making that change, presumably to make them closer to their homes, has anyone spoken with those minorities or with the African Americans that are part of that enclave and asked them if they feel like this is a good plan for them? Because I feel like when all of the satellite process and the enclave language started, we were talking about cities where people were being bused, an extra 20 minutes or 20 miles or whatever, a significant amount of time, so they're having to leave, earlier in the morning to get to school maybe. When we're talking about a 2.1 mile difference, I'm not sure that that's the case, and I'm not certain that the benefit of that shorter travel time will make up for the damage that could be caused from their social network being torn apart, their relationship with their teachers, and the other benefits they have by being in a home or in a school home that they're used to. I just wonder if anyone has spoken with those people that are directly being affected and for which much of the zoning is occurring, just to see, what their thoughts are.
The legal defense fund is clearly communicating and the advocate for those individuals. And so I would say to you that while those individuals who are in multi-family complexes may not embrace the plan, long-term, allowing those students to get closer to their school is desirable to the court.
Even if it's just a mile or two difference.
Yes, because the LDF and the DOJ has sat at the table with us to craft and plan and create this. So this is not something that's been designed outside the purview of those parties.
Thank you.
Hi.
So, I'm Christy Finn. I also live in the Reserve. And, of course, we've stated my kids really do walk to school, and were walking to school kind of before this. I have an 8 and 10-year-old, and my boys had just gotten to the point where I felt comfortable they could walk home. So this is a community school for us. And for me, even though it's not called the Reserve Community School, it is our community school. But the big reason I give you these pictures is you can see the diversity. The diversity is already there at Gwen. And this is my son's 3rd grade and 4th grade classes. In both of them, it is 3rd grade 52% white, 18% black, and 24% Hispanic. In the 4th grade class, it's 57% white, 19% black, and 19% Hispanic. These numbers have more blacks and Hispanic than the city of Hoover does, the U.S., or the state of Alabama. So there's already diversity there. The minorities are already there. And when we think about like what Laura said, the buses, the 50% of those kids are going to switch schools. If you look at that picture, it's more of the blacks and the Hispanics that are going to be swapped schools. Every apartment dwelling, every multifamily dwelling at Wheaton is going to change. Those kids are going to be impacted. And then if you also think about the preserve kids that are going to be taken out, those are also the ring parents. So 50% of the PTO committees are preserve parents. 26% of all the room moms are preserve parents. 25% of junior achievement are preserve parents. So you're taking away the resources, the volunteers, you're taking away also the financial burden, the finances that are going to this school, but then you're also changing it and making it not as good a school for both the blacks, the whites, and the Hispanics. So if you take it all the way down to that 40% poverty level, you've taken away the funding, you've taken away the volunteers, and then you've also changed the whole diverse crowd to a different whole student population. And it's nothing about going to Trace. Trace sounds like an amazing school, but we love Gwen. I have a 4th grader, a 2nd grader, and a daughter at the party. This is when I said, tells everybody who her teacher's going to be, because she was a baby, and that teacher held her because my 4th grader had that same kindergarten teacher. We had looked for this year. Next year was supposed to be the one year my kids were all at the same school. And I love Gwen, and I don't want to leave there. But it's more about the kids. It's more about what it's going to do to all of those kids, not just mine. It's the black kids, the Hispanic kids that nobody's really voicing an opinion for. Their lives are going to change. So I just say that all of
Make sure that we appropriately note that we are advocating for all students, Hispanic students, all students. So we're being very thoughtful about all of our students.
Hi, my name is Lois Brooks, and I live in Chase Lake, and I'm in 5th grade, and I go to River Chase Elementary. And I would just like to say that thank you for helping us with this, and I completely appreciate I'm concerned that I have to move to another school and meet new friends because it was very, very hard for me to meet new friends here. And I have two siblings, Mary Kate and Ray Lee Brooks, and one's in second grade and one's in preschool. And I'm just thankful that y'all have tried to help us very Lily and my mother and father are very helpful to get me through this, and I was very excited when I figured out that I was moving here. And I just thank you for all the things that you have done.
Laura Grace, thank you so much. Hope you have a terrific remainder of the school year. Thank you for sharing. You know, that's not easy to do as a young student to come to the microphone and share. I think we need to give her another round of applause.
It's not easy for 41-year-olds either.
I understand.
My name is Shane Solomon. Last year we bought a home in the Preserve, and the major part of the reason why we decided to buy a home there is the close proximity to our community school, which is Gwen. We were looking for a home close enough where our kids could walk to school because that's something that we've always wanted for our family. So we found a home that's basically our driveway is 0.4 miles away from the entrance to Gwen Elementary School, and never in our wildest dreams did we think we'd be here talking about the possibility of rezoning away from a school that's so close by and such an integral part of the community there. For our family, this rezoning proposal would present a lot of problems, one of which is that my oldest child is starting at Simmons next year. So it would create a situation where we would have to have one child at Simmons and the other child over at Trace Crossings, which by all accounts is a tremendous school. It's nothing about that. It's just about the proximity for our family and the difficulty it's going to create. So basically we would have to make a tough decision about possibly putting our child on a bus at 7 a.m. For him to ride for a full hour of his waking hours on a bus instead of being able to walk to school with his brother and with our family. So it's something that would be a big problem for us. At the informational meetings during the fall, you spoke of the importance of community schools, and you assured us that enclaves of schools would not be lifted out of one zone and moved to another zone. And unfortunately, that's exactly how it feels that the Preserve has been treated in this rezoning. It feels like we're being taken out of our community and bussed over to another zone. And so while I understand the need to not do that in the African American community, we're parents, our children are children also, and we care about them the exact same way, and we don't want that for our kids either. Also, you made the point earlier tonight and also in the meetings in the fall that the homes that are farthest away from the schools will be the ones most likely to be rezoned. Again, our driveway is 0.4 miles away. We have the intention to walk to school every single day. And so this is, for us quite a surprise, and we're shocked that, it's being considered to happen that way. On February 9th, a new court document was presented in the court, document 25, and it was a status report. And, not being a legal person or anything like that, I go through and read some of these court documents just to try to understand what's going into these decisions. And it seems like there were some criteria that were laid out either, I guess, in the discussions with DOJ and the LDF. And I want to focus on 4 of those, and then I'll give the mic to someone else. One of the criteria was letter A, contiguous boundaries, because that was one of the major problems that was trying to be solved by the rezoning. And, you've talked a lot about the importance of community schools, and obviously we all agree that that's a very important thing. Contiguous boundaries, though, it seems like when it comes to the Gwen zone, which is the yellow zone here on the map, the only way that that zone can be considered contiguous is by the inclusion of 3 to 4 miles of uninhabited forest, which is the narrow strip that goes across the top of the zone. That might be an artificial way of creating a contiguous zone, but it will never be inhabited. It's not an area where you can ever develop land or homes or neighborhoods. And so in a sense, it rips that community apart. So it's something that definitely I think should not be considered the same as like what you see in Bluff Park, for example, where you have a community that is completely united. Secondly, to minimize the impact on students, to move as few students as possible during the process. In fact, Gwynn, 51% of our school of Gwynn is being ripped apart, and that's something that, and the kids are being displaced, and so that seems to be quite a high number if one of the big criteria for this was to minimize the impact on students. To maximize the safety of the students, the preserve kids will need to travel by bus or car 3.8 miles to school, crossing major highways instead of a short walk from home to school. And also to maximize, D was to maximize transportation efficiency. And if this rezoning plan isn't changed, then traffic on Preserve Parkway will be heavy in both directions with school buses and minivans and cars taking kids back and forth. With us driving our kids towards Trace Crossings and some other neighborhoods like Lake Crest and Magnolia Run and others bringing their kids toward Gwynn. So it's actually going to increase traffic quite a bit in our neighborhood. And so all four of these criteria that I just mentioned, it seems would be helped by leaving the preserve in its current school, Gwynn. If the board decided to do that, it would bring Gwynn's utilization rate closer to the average, which is around, I think, 84–85%, and it would also bring our property percentage closer to the average. It wouldn't need to cause any kind of domino effect or change the whole plan if you made that decision to move the preserve and leave it at Gwynn, which is part of our community. So that's what we're asking you to do. Thanks for making this an open process where we can communicate our wishes, and that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Denise Monty. I have 4 children. We are currently zoned to Gwynn. That would change under the proposed rezoning plan. I first want to acknowledge that the Gwynn community here, but also the Gwynn community during the day, and I will mirror what Chrissy Finn said. The Gwynn school has functioned with a diversity that matches that of the Hoover district, matches that of the United States, all while being a Title I school. And I would be amiss not to applaud the outstanding effort of Dr. Kimberly White and her leadership in building that school. You see what we're fighting for. It's a community worth fighting for at Gwynn with an outstanding leader. And a few questions, though, related to this rezoning process. First, there was a court filing on February 9th, so very recently. That was a status update regarding the plaintiff's position on the rezoning plan. And when you read that court document, the plaintiffs did not presently agree to the plan. Could you kindly provide specifics that each plaintiff did not agree with? Because I think this would help us understand the process more and be able to give more feedback in the community meetings that remain. The second question that I have...
May I answer those as we go, because I get confused with how many questions are out there. Let me address that in regards to the plaintiff. Please understand that this is pending litigation, and there's some level of confidentiality as it relates to the conversation between attorney-client privileges. And so I may not indeed be able to give you answers that would meet your satisfaction. I do need to give evidence to the fact that because it's pending litigation, there is some levels of confidentiality here. As it relates to the plaintiffs, there is no particular expectation on my part that those plans would be signed off by those other parties at this time, because very clearly we wanted to bring the conversations back to our public. So I was not really looking for a signed off endorsement from the other two parties. In concept, I believe there's some level of agreement between and among the parties to include the school district. But clearly these conversations need to take place. We wanted them to take place so that we can take these conversations back to the other two parties to see how we might make this plan more beneficial across the board to all parties.
Okay, my second question has to deal with the high school capacity issue. So in the community meetings this fall, high school capacity was a consistently expressed problem from the community. Could you provide provide us with a more clear time frame now for dealing with the high school capacity issue because it's not being addressed in this rezoning plan?
Well, very clearly during our meetings in the fall, there was never any conversations that this plan was going to remedy the overcrowding, particularly at Hoover High School. And so, again, I think that was a transparent conversation that we didn't see that this was going to be a remedy to that. I will say to you that it is obvious that we're coming quickly to the juncture as a school district as it relates to our high schools, and we said this in our earlier meeting last week. Is it time for us to be thoughtful about how we expand Hoover High School, as much of the growth is to the west side of our city? Or is it time for our school district to give thought about perhaps the purchase of a piece of property and some plans moving forward as it would relate to a third high school? So we are clearly at that juncture, but I was never deceived in believing that this proposed rezoning plan would be a remedy to the Hoover High School feeder zone in its entirety, or to the school in its entirety.
But with all due respect, Dr. Murphy, as the leader of this school district, it would kind of be upon you to not just ask the question, is it time, but to have the vision of when would be the time for this high school capacity issue to be tackled. So that leads into my next question, though. If we clearly understand that high school capacity is an issue, and now we're talking about either adding on to a high school or building a school, it seems to me that with the timeline, again, as I had mentioned previously, that unitary status is not going to be achieved in one fell swoop, that this is going to occur incrementally over a period of time. And in reading the court documents, it's clear that the court has a number of serious issues related to our green factors, including faculty assignment and also student achievement. And these are very deep concerns that the court has expressed in open documents. And so, again, it questions why the bottom-up approach. Because if we're still not going to have unitary status, and we're going to have to address a high school capacity issue, then we're going to have to go through zoning again.
Well, as it relates to that, obviously, those are things that we're being thoughtful about. That no, we do not have a piece of property for which we're ready to put the shovel to the dirt. We realize that we have issues with the west side of the city, the high school level in particular. But I very clearly want to make sure that you understand that we're not being remiss in and not being thoughtful about the secondary level in our school.
I would say it's just an awfully high price for our elementary school students to be paying.
Well, I would certainly share this with you. Again, as it relates to unitary status, and I want to say this very respectfully and very thoughtfully, but the fact of the matter is we can either try to come to the table with our due diligence and our very best plan, or we can sit with our hands folded in our lap and in all likelihood have a plan possibly be drafted for us. I'd much rather be at the table, do our due diligence. It's not a perfect plan, but would really like to have our investment of thinking in this process versus not being able to do so. There's nothing in this process that makes me think that the court is necessarily going to wait for us to build a high school before there is going to be an expectation for rezoning. So sitting and waiting to create a high school first and then to look at rezoning second, that might not be the privilege of the school district to have that kind of time frame.
My name is Jody Patterson. I live at 404 Trace Court. This year marks my 57th year in the city of Hoover. I remember the quote from Dr. Murphy, August of 2015, that the Justice Department really wants us to respect neighborhood schools. It really doesn't get any more neighborhood than the planned PUD of Trace Crossings. Agreements with the city of Hoover Harvard-USX joint venture go back to 1987. I built my late brother's home, Russell Patterson, in 1989 in Willow Trace. I built my personal home in 1994. I think it's a terrible decision to mess with your neighborhood schools. There could be other issues in Trace Crossings. Trace Crossings was planned, marketed, developed, and sold as a package. Our homes, Trace Crossings Elementary, businesses, churches, including this church, were part of this community. Sold as a package. I know for a fact that U.S. Steel donated the 40 acres for Trace Crossings Elementary with the full understanding this school was for Trace Crossings. This included the entire planned community, all the homes, as well as the apartments across Highway 150, as well as the Wilburn property. Every one of us bought into this. Someone mentioned, I think, in the last school board meeting that Dr. Murphy and the school board could have some incorrect numbers, housing counts and projected numbers. I know there will never be 3,000 homes in Lake Wilburn. I don't know what numbers you're using. I've been told there could be a maximum of 1,000 homes. But as of yesterday, I had an official at the city of Hoover tell me he thought about 400 or 500 homes. I read an article by John Anderson that said the build out would be 5 to 6 years for 499 homes. Trace Crossings was originally projected for a 10-year build out. We're working on almost 30 years. Realistically, I would probably say Lake Wilburn's a 12 to 15-year build out, but it could be longer depending on the marketing and demand for homes there. Last, we are not going to have 816 apartments on the land between the apartments here and Interstate 459. That land has been zoned multifamily since 1982, and it's my understanding now, and I do believe its highest and best use is commercial. That's my understanding of what that property is going to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are at 8 o'clock, but we have some folks who are at the microphone, so we'll take our comments. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. First of all, Dr. Murphy, I believe that I personally owe you an apology. At the last meeting last week, I allowed my mother bear to come out, and I think that there are probably a lot of residents of Hoover who their true personalities are not what's shining at these meetings. Excuse me. What you don't know, some of the folks in our area know, is that my personality, my natural personality,
Crossings parents are so passionate is because we're spoiled completely rotten. And, you know, we brag, we love, we're scared to death that we're going to lose our, you know, maker studio and our steam room and all of those resources, because the passion that our teachers have is what has driven that progress. And all of that to say that when I stood up last week, a detail of my history, I guess, that I failed to mention, excuse me, is that when I was in college, I spent my entire duration of my college years as a junior high youth minister. Now, having witnessed so many awesome young middle school age students come through my life, and how I witnessed firsthand the volatility of that stage in their life, and yet how awesome those kids that age are. And when my husband and I had children, I would say, you know, people say, I can't wait till they're 5, I can't wait till they're, you know, 8. I could not wait until my kids got to middle school age, because that's where my experience is. And I know how great those kids are. And I know that some people, when I used to tell them I'm a junior high youth minister, they'd say, are you nuts? And I'd say, yes, I'm crazy for them. And I'm crazy for my girls. And I'm crazy for them getting the very best out of that stage in their life. And when I stood up as Mama Bear last week, it's very scary, because my husband's military, and we have lived over every square inch of this United States. When we chose to get out of active duty and go into the reserves, I said, we're going home to Hoover, because this is where our mamas are, and this is where our babies are going to be. And I fought him, because we have lived in some really great, awesome communities with some top-notch schools. But I fought him tooth and nail, because I wanted my kids at Trace. And I wanted my kids at Bumpus. Well, now what we're looking at is my daughter would get to stay at, we have a 4th grader, and then we have a child that's at Brock's Gap this year that would move to Bumpus next year. She, thank goodness, is not affected. My 4th grader would get to stay at Trace. We're in, and I'm not sure, but both the chart that came out, I believe today, I know I saw it today, and many in our community saw it today, that kind of clarified some of the data. And then when we first came in tonight, we were explaining some of the things to us. My neighborhood, Lakeview, was not mentioned in either one of those. And I realized that part of that's probably because we have a very small student population. Most of the people in that neighborhood are retirees. But we are one of the communities that would get to stay at Trace, which sounds wonderful, because we get to keep those awesome teachers and those awesome resources in our fabulous administration. Except that we would be one of that 20% or 25%, I think, that Shelba mentioned, where the rest of her peers that she's had, some of them since preschool and kindergarten, suddenly they're at Bumpus and we're at Simmons. Or they're, you know, and that's a really hard pill to swallow, because I have watched numerous children, both in my youth ministry years and our military years, who have been picked up and moved around. And the impact that that has on those children, and then independent of my family and our story, I think what hits me really hard too is one of the most volatile demographics we have is our low-income families. And y'all know that. And, you know, I understand that we're trying to make sure that that's levelized. I don't understand how, and this is one of my questions, how removing 2 multifamily dwellings from Trace Crossings and putting 5 more in, I can see where that would impact a demographic and an income level and all of that, but how is it impacting those children academically that are being moved when school oftentimes is the most stabilizing force in the lives of children that live in multifamily dwellings? And then my second question is, there is a lot of chatter amongst the members of this community, not just the Trace Crossings, but across all of Hoover, that they bought into their communities intentionally to be in the schools they're in, us included, and that they would rather consider the option of homeschooling or private schooling outside of being zoned into a school that's not part of their community. And I guess my question is, how is the DOJ and how are our school board members going to cope and handle a situation where next year, if the vast majority of our parents choose to either A, grandfather, or B, pull their children out of our school system, and that changes all of the percentages that have caused us to come to this decision to begin with?
Mike? Obviously, the changes that we're looking at are the numbers that we have currently. You know, obviously, I also hear your conversation, what if that changes? But all I can do at this point in time is to go with the information, obviously the data and the numbers that we have. So, okay. How many more do we have, just out of respect to the fact that we have lots of people who are getting up and leaving us? So if you want to speak, please step to the microphone now, and let's be very respectful of time now, as we've had a number of conversations and we do want to hear you. But if you want to speak, if you would come and share your point and give the next person the microphone. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my name is Laurel Gamla, and I live in Lake Trace. I've been in Lake Trace for about 10 years, and before that I was in Willow Trace. Jody was my neighbor, and it's the first time I've seen him since, you know, we've moved. But imagine my complete surprise when I found out that Trace Crossings was going to be divided, our community was going to be divided. My children are in college now. I don't, you know, I haven't been in the loop, and so I haven't really, I mean, this is the last thing we expected, was that our community would be divided. And then the preserve, I mean, that whole, you know, we know you know what I'm talking about. I don't know, I can't imagine, I just don't understand why Ross Ridge is not divided. I mean, Ross Ridge does not have its own school. It never was, you know, advertised as a community. I think they had talk about maybe getting a school someday, but they don't. I don't know if any plans. I don't know if there's plans for a school. There may be in time, but those families don't have their own, you know, their own school. They have to either get on the bus or be transported by their families all the way to Deer Valley. And now I only live about 5 minutes. It doesn't take me long to get to Deer Valley from Lake Trace. It's not that far. Now, if those children are going to go that little extra, I'm proposing that that Ross Ridge be subdivided and that preserve, you know, that area. Those areas keep their community schools, and Ross Bridge is going to be the community that takes the brunt of this. And it wouldn't be a negative thing. You know, Trace Crossings would maybe take, you know, 300. I don't have the demographics and the number of children in each community. And as I was trying to develop my own rezoning plan this past weekend, I thought maybe I could do that. All I had was this chart, the impact chart that was online. And really, you know, all the white children are grouped as the Hispanics and whites are together. So when you do look at this, you know, keep that in mind. Our Hispanic children, we haven't talked about them at all. And I'm not really sure about, I don't know how they are educated, if they need to be, you know, in certain schools with certain teachers, but they are lumped together with the white children when you look at all, you know, even when you see the PowerPoints. The children are, the Hispanic children are considered white children, so you don't see how they are affected at all. And we haven't even talked about them. And I think we should, because, you know, many of them are struggling with English as a second language, and that's really important that they have a say as well. So I'm proposing, and I'm going on a limb here, that Deer Valley should share equally in the percentage of poverty, as do the surrounding schools. That school should not be, you know, alone. No one has discussed this. In fact, I haven't heard any other if kids from Ross Bridge are divided between Deer Valley and Trace Crossings, and Trace Crossings is allowed to remain intact, the preserve, and the areas around the preserve are allowed to stay, when they can, those children from Deer Valley will be transported almost an equal, well, I'm not sure about the mileage, but almost an equal, if you want to get some of the apartment children to come in and balance, I think there would be a balance there. I think there would be a shift. I could be wrong, and I know they're going to say it's transportation and contiguous boundaries and all that. But the apartment children have a long ways to go to some of these schools. And I think that burden should be shared by the non-white children in some of the more elite areas. I'm for all children. My kids went to Trace Crossings. I do live in an elite neighborhood, but I feel like I am just like a loner in that neighborhood, that I think differently than many of the families, and I do want my children exposed to all children, but I want balance in the schools. I don't think there should be some schools that are not affected. And I wanted to ask real quick about the growth in the preserve. Are there more sites to be developed in the preserve? If anybody knows that, I'd like to know if that is an expanding area. There are quite a few. There's more growth. How many homes, do you know? Okay, I'd like to know that. That's important. Okay. That kind of factual information is what I wanted out of these meetings. Talk about real estate and just some factual, meaty things, but
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Chrissy Fuento. I live in Willow Trace, and I also have a grandson that lives in Willow Trace that will be zoned to, or would be zoned to Trace Crossings Elementary, but his mother has opted to put him in a private school off, I think it's 119 Westminster. And the reason why is, at least down around where we live, this is the rumor, or this is the talk. People say to us, oh, the last place you want to put him in is Trace Crossings Elementary. They said that is the last place you want to put him in. So naturally, we say, why? And they say, well, the school is at least 3/4 Hispanic, where the teachers are trying to teach those little children to teach, just to be able to speak English. So they say to me, where do you think that leaves him? He ain't got a chance. I mean, you got a room of 20 and 18 are Hispanic, maybe 2 are white or something, and so he's left behind. That's the rumor. Then, of course, I look at my property value. People moving in there, and they say that the school is a mess. It's terrible. And if this is true, I think it's a shame, because as we all know, private school private education is not cheap.
I do want you to know you've been completely misinformed. That is not accurate and true at Trace Crossing School. And regardless of what the naysayers may say out there, that is an excellent school, so you have been completely misinformed.
Oh, so you say it's not 3/4 Hispanic and the teachers are having...
No, ma'am, but here's my position. Regardless if it's 100% Hispanic, 100% white, or 100% black, those are our children. They're the kids that opened our door, and we have a responsibility and an obligation to nurture and love and support them.
But what about our children? What about
all of
the
our
white children?
Yes, ma'am, all of our children. Thank you.
No, but they need an education too.
Oh, absolutely. All of our children do. Thank you for sharing with us. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Laila Hamilton, and I live in Scout Creek. I have 3 boys, and their ages 7, 4, and 2 months old. So I'm just going to echo what my neighbors have already expressed, but I wanted to express the same things because I think it's important to understand how many families that the rezoning is affecting in Trace Crossing. So we moved here for the master plan community, as it was spoken. Our dentist, pediatrician, grocery, pharmacy, daycare, the school, everything is here. And one reason that we chose Trace Crossings over Ross Bridge was because Trace Crossings Elementary School was already in place. So when my son was getting out of daycare, we heard the stigma about Trace Crossings, and we decided to send him to private school. And from talking to school administrators, teachers that teach at other Hoover schools, they all said that Trace Crossing was amazing. So we sent him there this year for first grade, and he has flourished this year. I mean, he loves it. He loves it better than the private school that he was at last year, and I really think we wasted a lot of money last year. He loves the STEAM lab. He loves the Maker Studio. He loves his teacher. And so now, like I mentioned, we have 3 kids. So taking him to school, taking the other child to daycare, or the other 2 that are in daycare in Trace Crossings, it's going to take about a 15-minute round trip to take them to daycare and school, and now it's going to increase it. I don't even know how much. It's going to be at least 30 minutes because, as people mentioned, the traffic on South Sagecrest is ridiculous, and we were so grateful that we didn't have to get in that traffic, and now we do. Also, regarding the grandfathering, it doesn't do my son any justice or any favors to grandfather him for just 1 year. And one possible suggestion would be that you allow for the students to be grandfathered similar to Vestavia schools did it, where the current student, as well as their siblings, would be able to go to Vestavia instead of just this 1 year that has been proposed. And lastly, I was told by someone who attended the meeting last Thursday that it was stated by you, Dr. Murphy, that you were, quote, not impressed or influenced by the displays of community solidarity, unquote. I wasn't there.
Can you repeat that again?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And I do want to say, I wasn't there, but it was said that you, quote, said you were not impressed or influenced by the displays of community solidarity. I wasn't there. I don't know if you said that, but it was said that.
Once again, completely misinformed.
Okay, that's fine. But what will influence you to listen to what everybody has said about the students that live in the Trace Crossings neighborhoods? What will influence you to let them stay at Trace Crossings Elementary School?
Very clearly, we're listening, and very clearly we are even adding an additional opportunity for this community to come to the table with us. And we're doing so very respectfully, taking appropriate note of the conversations. Can I promise you tonight that all of the people who walk to the microphone are going to be happy when we come back with a plan? I can absolutely guarantee you that will not happen. But can I assure you that we are listening and being respectful and looking at any and every way that we can respect the request of this community and meet our other obligations? Absolutely.
Okay, and just wrapping up really quick, I guess overall we're concerned about how our son's going to adjust changing to South Sagecrest next year. We're also concerned about property value, and we're concerned about the traffic on South Sagecrest. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Tricia Crane. I'm a longtime Hoover resident. One of my 3 children went all the way through Hoover City Schools. I graduated a few years ago. I stepped to the microphone tonight because I think that a lot of people are new to the whole Hoover School thing. Everything's been going well, and so they haven't been paying attention for the last however many years. And I want to publicly thank you, Dr. Murphy, for being so bold and transparent and coming to the community with this information. You've been here since June, and your plate has been full. I'm looking forward to hearing your vision for a 3rd high school, but I forgive that you don't have one yet. I expect it soon. I have high expectations. And I think that folks in the audience, I hope those who are still here, who haven't been around here, will understand the precarious situation that Hoover schools have been in since 2004, when our Hoover City Council changed the way our schools are funded. Okay, they cut out a I don't expect Dr. Murphy to say this. I kind of expect our Board of Education to, but there'll be opportunity for that down the road. They took a very important funding stream away from us. And John Anderson wrote a brilliant article a few years ago that said that change amounted to about $50 or $60 million. That money was the money that should have been coming from our sales tax that no longer does, was going to build schools, okay? It was going to build a Ross Bridge Elementary School. It was going to build a third high school. All of those plans stopped when the council, one member who is here tonight, Jack Wright, was on the council when that decision was made. And we have, 2016 is an election year, just to remind you, but we have an opportunity now with the economy rebounding to take a look again at how our schools are funded and make sure that our government, our local government, is supporting the growth that they've allowed in the development. These folks don't get to decide whether new homes are built, okay? All they can do is react, all right? So I know that a lot of folks are pointing a lot of ire at Dr. Murphy, but there are a lot of people who share the blame for us being hamstrung for the last 12 years, and why we're having a $10 million deficit, and why we make the decisions that we have to make in our schools. So I took my opportunity here at the microphone tonight to say that. This is not easy. Man, I'm glad I'm not you. I'm glad I'm not on the Board of Education. But we have capable leaders who are going to have to make those decisions, and we have an opportunity this year to listen to council candidates who are going to talk about giving our schools the financial support that we need. Thank you.
And I believe we're down to our last speaker.
It's almost over. My name is Karen Desire, and I'm a parent at South Shades Crest Elementary. And I just wanted to point out what I feel is a concern, given the current utilization versus the projected utilization. South Shades Crest goes from 83% utilized to 63%, and the one that really concerns me is that Brock's Gap goes from 73% to 49%. We feel that, or I feel, that considering grandfathering, and I know you can't make those projections, but you know, the fact that people will choose to grandfather, those numbers are going to be much lower than that. And to reiterate what Dawn said earlier, just take into consideration, we're the only community that will be expected to support 2 schools, fundraise for 2 schools, and you know, help bridge the gap between, you know, funding and what is needed. And I think that at 49% capacity, next year is going to be kind of a rough year for that. And so when Dawn was talking about, you know, balancing the resources among the schools, I really hope you guys will take into consideration, you know, we're not a Title I school, we're not eligible for that funding, so it really is the responsibility of the parents and the PTO to raise those funds, and when we're only at 49% capacity, I mean, that's not a lot of people to do that. And also, I just wanted to ask what the consideration was, if any at all, that Brock's Gap be a 4th and 5th grade school to serve Deer Valley, South Shades Crest, and Trace Crossings. Just a thought. Thank you.
We did look at every configuration in that area and in all of the western side of Hoover and modeled that out. And so we did look at that particular configuration as a possibility.
Please let me thank you again for your spending your evening with us. We appreciate the comments that you've made to us tonight. I want to say to all of our school administrators, and many of them are in the room, how proud I am of each of you and each of your schools and the terrific and awesome things that you're all doing. So while we have schools who have neat experiences such as STEAM and the Maker Studio, and I certainly applaud Trace Crossings for that, I also would be remiss to not mention the many other terrific things that are going on in so many of our other schools, or in all of our schools. So thank you for the leadership. Thank you for your input. And our next meeting will be on Thursday evening. It's at 6 o'clock, and that's at Green Valley Baptist Church. And don't forget, we've added an additional meeting for Monday evening, and that location will be announced. Thank you so much.